Everyone loves playing You Asked For It. And now there is You Asked For It Millennial Edition, the trivia game where millennials ask their big questions and Broadway church pastors answer them. You Asked For It, the Millennial Edition.
This is it. You are here for the You Asked For It series, Millennial Edition. What in the world is a millennial? Okay, they've been known as Generation Y before, okay? But the millennial generation is born between 1980 and 2000. So if you're here and you're between the ages of kind of like 18 to 35, you are a millennial. You're a millennial. You're reaching young adulthood in the new millennium. That's how you got your name as a millennial. Now, I don't know if you've been living under a rock for too long, but millennials are the reason the world is falling apart, okay? Millennials are blamed for everything, These are real articles that I found that came out this past year. These aren't fake. I haven't made these up. These are real articles. Millennials are blamed for killing the cereal industry. And the article goes on to say that millennials are just too lazy to clean up after themselves, so cereal is, quote, too much work. Millennials killed cereal. Millennials are killing the napkin industry. It's done because of millennials. Like, we just got stuff on our hands, we'll just rub it on our pants. Millennials, thanks for that. Millennials, they killed bar soap. No one's using bar soap anymore. It's just body wash, so thanks for that, millennials. Millennials are ruining running, okay? They just killed the running boom. We've just come up with other ways to exercise that's more fun than just running, I guess. Okay, millennials killed running. Millennials killed the EU, the European Union. Sorry, I think. I don't even know what the EU is or what it does, so maybe that's why we killed it. Okay. Millennials killed Canadian tourism. Maybe the Rockies just weren't rocky enough for millennials, okay? But we killed it, sorry. Millennials killed yogurt. How does someone kill yogurt? And to be fair, it's light yogurt that we killed, okay? Light yogurt. It had its day coming. And millennials killed the McWrap. It's gone, sorry. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, not loving it, okay? Millennials killed the McWrap, sorry. So, I'm reading through all of these articles and I'm thinking to myself, you silly millennials, you are just ruining the world. You are killing everything. And then the thought hit me, Simon, you're a millennial. I'm a millennial. I'm the reason the world's falling apart. I'm a millennial. See, I grew up on Survivor and American Idol and reality TV where you could become an overnight star, like literally overnight, okay? I grew up on participation trophies where I was told I was important just because I showed up. I grew up in a world where with just the click of a button, I knew that I could have any product on earth delivered to my front door by the next morning. I grew up in a culture that told me that I was unique and that I had something to offer the world, and I believed them. See, I grew up being taught to question everything, to take nothing at face value. Skepticism was like a safety net in my life. I grew up being told that my opinion mattered and that I should express my views wherever and whenever I felt like it. And now through the advancements of the internet and social media, I can. See, I grew up in a world believing that my own individual rights and my own freedom was my most valued asset, and that I was entitled to follow my dreams no matter where it was that they led me. See, this is the world that I grew up in with no fault of my own. I didn't ask for this. This was just a worldview that was ingrained into me. I didn't choose this. This is just the world that I grew up in. I'm a millennial. So, you're thinking, okay, Simon, I kind of get what a millennial is, a young adult, and they have this outlook on life, this worldview, so to speak. But why is it that the world seems to think that millennials have all this power? Why do these millennials have all this power that they are actually capable of killing things, whole industries of things? Well, according to the US Census Bureau, the millennial generation is the largest generation to ever live. There's 97 million millennials living in the States alone right now. They've overtaken the baby boomer generation with only 77 million living in the States right now. So because of their sheer size, millennials are having a massive impact on everything: the economy, the workforce, consumerism, and even religion. According to Pew Research, they did a poll in 2015. When asked about their religion, 35% of millennials ticked the box that said, none of the above. None of the above. 35% of millennials are nothing. They're nothing. They don't associate with any faith group. They're unaffiliated with any faith. They are spiritually disengaged. We actually have a term for these people now. They're called the nuns. They're the nuns. Not like nuns like nuns as in like nothing. They're the nuns. The most disconcerting part about this whole idea of nuns is the nuns are the fastest growing demographic there is. They've grown by 10% in just the last 10 years. So you might be thinking, well, why are the nuns growing so fast? Like, what's the deal? How come being nothing, being spiritually disengaged is like the thing to be now? Why are the nuns growing so fast? Well, one of the reasons is millennials are leaving the church in droves. It's been called an exodus from the faith. Now watch an article get written and said, the headline's gonna say, pastors blame millennials for killing religion. Sorry, that's on me. Now, millennials are leaving the church in droves, and this is how we know. One of the biggest Christian denominations in the world, called the Assemblies of God, they ran a study, and the study showed 66.7% of Christian young people will step away from their faith within 4 years of graduating high school. Just let that sink in for a second. 66.7 Christian young people leaving the faith within 4 years of high school. And you might be thinking, Simon, that must be in America or somewhere else in the world, but not here in Canada. We are a Christian nation. No way, not here in Canada. A Canadian study was done, and they found the exact same thing. The study's called Hemorrhaging Faith, and they found 2 in 3 Canadian millennials are leaving the church after high school. 2 in 3 Canadian millennials are leaving the church after high school. So let me introduce you to some millennials that we have here at Broadway. This is Atto. Atto, he's 21 years old. He's an apprentice mechanic at Toyota, and he's a youth leader, and he also leads a young adults small group. This is Atto. Here we have Janine. Janine's 19. She works as a receptionist, and she also runs a youth drop-in center out of the warehouse. She's a graduate from our Broadway interns program, and she also serves on the youth church leadership team. And this here is Angela. Angela is 20, and she's studying early childhood education at Langara College in Vancouver. She attends our POCO campus every week, and she's a volunteer in our kids ministry there at POCO. She actually did a missions trip to Africa just last year with Broadway Church as well. So we see a stat that says 2 in 3 millennials are leaving the church after high school. These aren't just like figures and stats on a page. These are real people. These are our real people. And only 1 in 3 of our millennials are going to continue on in their walk with Jesus, according to the statistics. This is a sobering thought. Like, just let this sink in for a second. If only we could have seen this coming. If only there was some way to tell in advance that this might happen. If only someone could have predicted how precarious the Christian walk really could be. One day, Jesus is teaching to a crowd, and the crowd starts to grow so big that he has to get into a boat and go a bit out into the water, and the crowd starts to form on the shore so everybody can see him, everyone can hear him. And he begins to tell them a story. He says, listen, what do you make of this? A farmer planted seed, and as he scattered the seed, some fell onto the road, but the birds came and ate it. Some of the seed fell into the gravel. It sprouted up quickly, but it didn't put down roots. So when the sun came up, it just withered just as quickly. Some of the seed, they fell into the weeds. And as it came up, it was strangled among the weeds, and nothing came of it. But some fell on good soil, and it came up with a flourish, producing a harvest exceeding his wildest dreams. Now the crowd all starts to mumble, and they turn to themselves going, what is Jesus talking about here? We're not making the connection, Jesus. So the disciples come up to Jesus and say, Jesus, what are you meaning with this story that you're telling? And so Jesus starts to explain his story. He says, the farmer, he plants the word. Some people are like the seed that falls on the hardened soil of the road. No sooner do they hear the word than Satan snatches away what had been planted in them. And some are like the seed that lands on the gravel. When they first hear the word, they respond with great enthusiasm. But there's such shallow soil of character that when the emotions wear off and some difficulties arrive, there's nothing to show for it. The seed cast into the weeds represents the one who hear the kingdom news but are overwhelmed with worries about all the things they have to do and all the things they want to get. The stress strangles out what they've heard and nothing comes of it. But the seed planted in the good soil represents those who hear the word, embrace it, and produce a harvest beyond their wildest dreams. When you and I hear the stat, 2 in 3 Canadian millennials are leaving the church after high school, this might shock you. I hope it shocks you. It shocked me when I read it. But Jesus warned us all along about how precarious the Christian walk really can be. It's almost as if Jesus was speaking directly to our millennial generation with this story as a warning, as a cautionary tale, as a kind of a sign to look out for pitfalls, to respond and to guard to the seed of truth that had been planted in their hearts. So with this as a backdrop, today I want to answer the question, why are millennials leaving their faith? Why are they walking away, and how do we get them back? How do we get them back? Now, the issues are plentiful. The reasons are many, but over our limited time today, I've chosen just to focus on a few of them today and talk about how it is that we're going to actually get our millennials back. So if you have your outline with you today, number 1, why are millennials abandoning their faith? Number 1, because we haven't engaged their minds. We haven't engaged their minds. So for the most part, not all churches across Canada fall into this category, but the vast majority of churches have become irrelevant to millennials. We've just simply become irrelevant to millennials. Our style and our method and the way we've done church simply is not meeting that generation. We're missing them completely. We're not speaking their language. They're not picking up what we're putting down. It's that simple. And in turn, as your outline says, their faith and their theology is too weak. Their faith and theology is too weak to sustain the pressures of culture, trials, university, and simple busyness. So, church, hear me when I say this. This is not a them issue. This isn't a silly millennials issue. This is an us issue. The problem isn't them, the problem is us. It's not their fault, it's ours. Millennials, they grew up in a culture and they were taught to question everything. They were taught to question everything. And when they started to have grown-up questions for their childhood faith, the church left them hanging. The church let them down. So historically, the church has been giving faith-based answers to fact-based questions, and millennials, they want the truth. We need to engage their minds. They want their hard questions answered. They want the church to wade into uncomfortable discussions about gender and race and sexual orientation and why evil exists and real life issues that they and their friends are dealing with each and every day. This is one of the reasons that we're doing the YAFE series, the You Asked For It series, the Millennial Edition. So we can hit head on the topics that millennials are actually asking. We don't have to sidestep these issues. We can actually confront these uncomfortable situations and questions. So we're going to be talking about abortion, and we're going to talk about euthanasia and the LGBT issue. We're going to talk about suicide and why a good God would allow evil. We're going to talk about how to deal with shame and guilt in your life. We're going to talk about God's will and how to find his purpose for your life. We're going to start answering questions that millennials are actually asking. We're talking no sugarcoating, no watering down the truth, real grown-up answers to real grown-up questions. And research, time and time again, backs this up. Elizabeth Corey from Emory University says, we think they want cake, but what they actually want is steak and potatoes. But we keep giving them cake. See, we need to engage their minds. We need to give millennials a reason to believe. We need to present evidence for the hope that we have in Jesus. We need to strengthen their faith and their theology so they can actually withstand the pressures of culture and trials and university and simple busyness, so they can overcome. You see, parents, we have done such a good job at forcing our kids to be educated. Like, this has been such a big deal to us parents. We force our kids to go to university and get an education so they can get a good job. And the millennial generation is now the most educated generation to ever live. Millennials that are looking for a job right now, they know oftentimes a bachelor's degree is no longer good enough, but you need a master's degree to get the job you want. So we send our young people to university, away from their churches, away from their faith community, into an environment where a majority of their professors think their Christian faith is a joke, and then we wonder why these young people want to abandon their faith so quickly after high school, during these crucial years of their life. A study by Neil Gross and Solon Simmons, they found that 25% of college professors are professing atheists or agnostics, but only 6% of the general population is atheistic or agnostic. That means university campuses are 400% more anti-God than the everyday world. These are just some of the pressures that millennials are facing every day on our campuses all across our nation. They also found that 51% of college professors describe the Bible as an ancient book of fables, legends, history, and moral precepts. They think Christianity is merely a fairy tale. This is the pressure our millennials are up against. And we, the church, we haven't done a good enough job training them up to succeed in their faith. So when they bump up against the pressures of trial and culture and university and simple busyness, their faith is just simply too weak to overcome. Jesus said, some are like the seed that land on the gravel. When they first hear the word, they respond with great enthusiasm. But there is such shallow soil of character that when the emotions wear off and some difficulties arrive, there is nothing to show for it. Now, intellect is not the only reason that millennials are leaving the church. In many cases, their hearts are abandoning God far before their minds. Their hearts are abandoning God far before their minds. And this brings me to my second reason why millennials are abandoning their faith. Number 2, as your outline says, they haven't protected their hearts. They haven't protected their hearts. Okay, millennials, so the first one's on us. We haven't engaged your minds. But the second one, this one's on you, millennials. They haven't protected their hearts. And you might be thinking, Simon, protected their hearts from what? Sin. They haven't protected their hearts from sin. And more specifically, sexual sin. And more precisely, pornography. See, pornography is an epidemic abusing the hearts and the minds of young people all across the globe. And you might be here thinking, Simon, there's no way that pornography can be a millennial issue because porn has been around forever, okay? You're absolutely right. Pornography's been around forever. Pornography is not new, but access is. Access is. Pornography is available 24/7 on the device that every millennial carries around in their pocket all day long. Never in history has sin been more accessible than it is today. Last year, I did a sermon all about the devastating effects of pornography called Why Does Porn Kill Love? If you're interested, you can access this for free online at broadwaychurch.com. So, saying that sin is the reason millennials are abandoning their faith might strike you as a bit odd, okay? But just humor me for a moment. You see, sin will never show up in a statistic. See, sin is too sneaky for that, and the enemy is too deceitful. There is no millennial anywhere, and I mean no millennial anywhere, that will ever stick up their hand and say, the real reason I left the church is because sin was just too fun and appealing. Okay, that doesn't happen. No one will say that. What they'll say is, the reason I left the church is because I couldn't wrap my mind around why a good God would let evil happen, or why a good God wouldn't answer my selfless prayers. You see, as your outline says, when our hearts grow cold to the things of God, it's easy for our minds to follow. When our hearts grow cold to the things of God, it's easy for our minds to follow. Sin, it cannot be ignored. It always robs, it always kills, it always destroys, and it always deceives. Once sin enters your life, it spreads. It distorts the way you think and the way you feel. Think of it this way. Millennials are driving down the road in a brand new car their parents just bought them. Classic millennials, right? They're driving down the road in this brand new car their parents just bought them, and the car has a name. The car's name is Christianity. So they're driving down the road in this car, and they're driving along this superhighway called the church. And so they're driving along the superhighway called the church in their brand new car called Christianity that their parents just bought them, and they hit this roadblock, and this roadblock is called sin. And they get stuck behind this roadblock called sin on this superhighway. And instead of pushing through that barrier, instead of overcoming that obstacle, millennials are simply getting out of the car and they start walking. That's it. They get out of the car and they stop walking. Millennials, listen. If you don't protect your heart from the ravages of sin, it becomes that much easier to walk away from it all. Some people, they're like seeds that fall on the hardened soil of the road. No sooner do they hear the word than Satan snatches away what had been planted in them. See, these are just some of the reasons why millennials are leaving the church. But how do we get them back? How do we ensure we don't lose any more of them in the future? How can we make sure that Atto and Janine and Angela, how do we make sure that they actually stay on in their faith and they continue to thrive in their relationship with God? How do we get them back? As your outline says, the first thing we need to do is teach and live the Bible. We have to teach and live the Bible. See, millennials, they want the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, okay? We need to start giving them steak, not just cake. And we need to do it in a way that speaks to their generation, in a way that is relevant. See, relevance is one of our core values here at Broadway Church. Relevance means that we strive to understand and creatively speak to our times. So this doesn't mean, hear me when I say this doesn't mean we have to give up on our core values at all. This doesn't mean that we have to swing in whatever way culture happens to be blowing that month. As your outline says, relevance doesn't mean that we have to abandon our beliefs. Relevance doesn't mean we have to abandon our beliefs. In fact, a recent Canadian study shows that theologically conservative churches are growing, but theologically liberal churches are shrinking. This is the research. Conservative Protestant theology, with its more literal view of the Bible, that's us, is a significant predictor of church growth, while liberal theology leads to decline. See, this means we can stay firmly planted on our core beliefs, that we can lean into God's design for humanity, that we can teach and preach the truth of the Bible, and we can continue to point people to a life-changing Savior, Jesus Christ. And we can do this all in a way that is loving, that is respectful, and engages our culture and our young people. See, it's not just enough to teach the Bible, though. We actually have to live the Bible. We have to live the Bible. It's been said that authenticity is the new excellence. Authenticity is the new excellence. Let me explain. Something that we hold in high esteem around the walls and the hallways of Broadway Church is excellence. We try to do everything we can with excellence because, well, we're working for God. Like, He deserves our everything. He deserves our best. We want to bring him our best. And we believe that excellence will actually draw people to our Creator. And so something we say around the office all the time is, that'll do, won't do. That'll do, won't do. Meaning the attitude of mediocrity, like, oh, that's good enough, or that'll do, that just simply isn't good enough. That won't do. We strive to be excellence and bring our excellence forward. And that used to be enough to draw people to God. But it isn't anymore. Authenticity is the new excellence. Authenticity is the new excellence. We have to live authentic lives. That means we actually have to live what we preach. Our actions have to follow our beliefs. We have to be vulnerable with people. We actually have to get down in the trenches and do life with people. We actually have to share their journey with them. And this leads me to the second way that we're going to reach millennials. Number 2 on your outline, we need to offer real community around faith. Offer real community around faith. Have you ever walked into a Starbucks and seen a whole bushel of millennials just hanging out doing homework? Okay, half of them are on their Instagram feeds just floating through, okay? Millennials love to be together. No, it doesn't matter what they're doing, they love to be together. They want to do it together. Deep and meaningful relationships are so important to millennials. So important. Now, I know what you're thinking. You hear the fact that I just said deep and meaningful relationships are important to millennials, and some of you guys are going, hold up, Simon. Hold up. How can deep and meaningful relationships be so important to millennials when they're the most antisocial generation ever? They're always on their phones. They're not interacting with real humans around them. They're just playing on their screens all day. How can deep and meaningful relationships actually matter to them? Contrary to popular belief, millennials are not antisocial. If anything, they're overly social. See, millennials have tapped in to that core need that every human being on earth feels. A need to be in relationship. And they've devised a way that they don't only have to interact with the 3 human beings in their direct presence right there, they can interact with 30 or 300 or in some cases 3,000 individuals, real humans, all at once via social media. Millennials, they crave deep and meaningful relationships, and now they have a way that they can do that on a large scale. So, I think about millennials, and I think they want to do things together. They don't want to just be told what to do. They want to be shown. They want someone to walk with them. They want someone to walk with them. They want to know that there's a place for them to belong, that there's room for them, that there's room for their unbelief, there's room for their doubts, there's room for their failures. They want someone to come alongside of them as they're propelled into adulthood. So as your outline says 2 ways that we can make this happen is through small groups and mentoring. Through small groups and mentoring. Let's just dive into small groups for just a second. In case you're unaware what a small group is or how it can impact your life, small groups are an easy way to simply do life with someone, where you can discuss the Bible and faith, where you can pray for one another, encourage one another, and have a trusted friends group to actually journey through life together with. Listen, if you're here, no matter what age you are, if you're not involved in a small group, listen to me when I say you are missing out on the community and the depth of relationship that the church can offer you in your faith journey. You are simply missing out on the fullness of what the church can do in your relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're here and you are a millennial and you want to join a small group, I want to make that happen the best I can. You can contact our young adults pastor, Lewis C. at BroadwayChurch.com, and he can get you in a small group tomorrow. If you're here and you're not a millennial and you're like, man, these small groups sound sweet, okay, they are, and you can join a small group. Pastor Mick Nelson, our pastor of discipleship here, he can get you in a small group tomorrow. Contact Mick N. at BroadwayChurch.com. So small groups is the first way to offer real community around faith. And the second way is mentoring, okay, mentoring. Quick tip on finding a mentor, you ready? Never ask someone to be your mentor, okay? Normally if you ask someone to be your mentor, It will freak them out. They'll think that they don't got time to mentor someone. There's so much pressure that comes along with like having to mentor someone and what to say and how to do it. No one's trained in mentoring. So don't ask someone to be a mentor. Just simply ask someone out for coffee. Tell them you want to buy them breakfast and tell them you want to pick their brain about something. And then come with a list of questions ready to ask. And then remember, you're there to do the listening and they're there to do the talking. You're there to glean wisdom from them. So many times we look for mentors and then we just sit there and do all the talking. Let the mentor do the talking. Let them pour into your life. If you are here and you have the ability or the opportunity to pour into a millennial through mentoring, do it. They will be better for it, you will be better for it, and the health and the future of our church will be better for it. You see, statistically, the millennial generation is the most aborted, abandoned, and neglected generation in history. And we are looking for spiritual mothers and fathers, spiritual aunts and uncles, spiritual mentors and role models in our life. So if you ever have that opportunity, take it. I would love to be your mentor matchmaker, okay? I would like to be matchmaker, make me a... Okay. I would love to be that guy that puts you together. So if you are a millennial and you want a mentor, please contact me. If you are not a millennial and you want to be a mentor, please contact me. SimonG@BroadwayChurch.com. I would love to see some cross-pollination, cross-generational pollination happen at our church. And I would love to get you in a mentoree relationship. Okay, if we engage in real community together, we are not gonna let the stress and the pressures of life and the worries about all the things they wanna do and all the things they wanna get and the thorns of this life choke us out. See, if we dig into real community around small groups and mentoring, we will make it increasingly difficult for our young people to abandon their faith. Okay, finally, I've left the most important to last. Study after study after study show the number one thing that will reach millennials is parental support. It's parental support. Parents continue to be the single greatest influence on their children's faith. It starts with you, mom. It starts with you, dad. They are gonna follow your example in your faith. When a child sees or hears that faith actually makes a difference in mom and dad's life, they're much more likely to follow suit. So mom and dad, let me ask you, do your kids see you reading your Bibles at home? Mom and dad, do your kids see you serving in the church? Mom and dad, do your kids see you practicing radical hospitality and being a good neighbor? Are you living out the faith that we want them to live out? A 35-year study was done on families and faith, and the results showed that young Christians who leave their faith are far more likely to return when parents have been patient and supportive, and perhaps more tolerant and open than they had been before their prodigal's departure. Parents, if your son or daughter has left the faith, hear me. Don't give up on them. Continue to pray for them. Be patient with them. Continue to love them. Do not abandon them. Continue to model what a real relationship with Jesus actually looks like. Because, as your outline says, you will always be the single greatest influence on your child's faith. You will always be the single greatest influence on your child's faith. Let me conclude. The church is not perfect. The church at large is not perfect. And Broadway Church is not perfect. But the local church is the hope of the world, and we can reach the next generation. The local church is the hope of the world, and we can reach the next generation. We want to do everything in our power to make sure that our young seeds have the best chance to sprout up and to flourish, to produce a harvest greater than our wildest dreams. And this brings me to today's big idea. Each week at Broadway, we try to sum up the day's teaching with one simple big idea, and this is it. Through the local church, young seeds can grow into towering oaks. Through the local church, young seeds can grow into towering oaks. See, we want to do everything in our power to ensure that Atto and Janine and Angela, that they keep the faith. We want to do everything in our power to engage their minds and to protect their hearts. We want to do everything in our power to authentically teach and live the Bible, to create real community for a place for them to belong. You see, we have exceptional young people in our congregation and in our church. And if we pour into the next generation of young people, we will see the next generation of leaders flourish in his church. God's kingdom will increase to all corners of the earth. Amen? Amen. Would you bow your heads with me? Would you close your eyes for just a moment as we close today?